B'Elanna and Paris are leaving the holodeck. In a rare example of Voyager having one of those long-running threads I've been asking for, they've been using a bat'leth training program that was mentioned in the last episode. B'Elanna doesn't seem to have been overly fond of it, resulting in some of their trademark romance friction, but forget all about that because some guy just appeared on the ship out of the ether and is asking where he is. After initially accusing us of abducting him, he seems to calm down a touch when B'Elanna and Paris are as confused as he is. He complains of being cold and that everything is too bright, so after Paris tells the bridge we have an unexpected guest, off to sickbay we go. We make him a touch more comfortable and Janeway tries to find out what's going on. Our guest, who hasn't given us his name yet but feels like a Bernard to me, doesn't know what happened. He simply appeared here when he was going for a walk. The doc asks Tuvok to assist in scans of Bernard as Kez is late for her shift, giving Janeway cause to ask the computer where she is. The answer, we discover, is not here. In fact, she hasn't been on the ship since exactly the same time that Bernard appeared. Apparently, we're in some sort of interstellar exchange program. B'Elanna and Kim are trying to science the cause of all this, but nothing fits. Then Kim disappears too, coinciding with us gaining another guest. We lose an extra as well, but nobody gives a shit about him. Tuvok is quite another matter, as we'll soon be out of main cast members, and with each loss another guest turns up. Is this some sort of ruse to commit grand theft starship? To her credit, Janeway considers this option too, which is rather pleasing. Based on the current intervals, they'll all be removed in 18 hours' time, so that's how long we've got to figure this out. Suitably motivated and with some data from one of our guests, who's an astrophysicist, B'Elanna does a science and discovers we've caught the arse end of a baby wormhole. The low probability of the other end connecting to a breathable environment makes me suspicious, and has me leaning more heavily into the hijacking explanation. Janeway seems to trust the astrophysicist enough to involve him in the solution, though, and calls to have him sent to engineering. Well, half calls, as she disappears before finishing the conversation. Looks like Chakotay's been promoted to captain again, making it 3 times this season. His first order as captain, and get that astrophysicist and get some answers. Up on the bridge, we've run out of people to recognize, so this ensign just here is now chief of security. Things are looking up, though, as she reports the latest disappearance is Neelix. Unfortunately, that does leave us with only 40 original crew members, so Captain Chakotay thinks it'd be wise to restrict all systems to recognized voice patterns and lock any areas our guests shouldn't be in. I'd have thought both of those would be standard procedure, but there you go. Back in engineering, B'Elanna's starting to wonder if this is really a wormhole after all, as it doesn't have some of the science wibblies that wormholes have. Astrophysicist is dismissive of this, but she persists as he gets awfully close to that security guard. A bit of the old violence later, and Astrophysicist has a gun. Good to see we're back to the standard level of security competence after that last episode. Astrophysicist pokes the computer a bit, saying he's making sure B'Elanna is taken next, confirming that the whole thing was bullshit from the get-go. B'Elanna is teleported to meet the others, and I have to say this all looks rather pleasant. At least it does until the people with guns turn up. They take her comm badge and depart, and Janeway fills B'Elanna in. Voyager's crew is split between here and other similar compounds. Curious thing though, it's too bright and too cold to be the place our guests live, almost as though it was created just for humans. Tuvok's gone for a little scout, and maybe he'll have more answers when he returns. Voyager's having no better luck. We're down to a handful of people, but one of them just found the unconscious guard in engineering, and Chakotay thinks it's time for a chat with our guests. They seem to have other plans as they've all buggered off. Chakotay tells anybody still listening to get to the bridge or engineering and be ready for some potential pooping. Our guests are already in the Jeffries tubes, led by none other than Bernard himself. You bastard. On the bridge, our new ensign is giving orders to others that turn up, presumably because getting some lines earlier makes her the closest we have to someone in charge. The guests break in and pooping happens. She takes out 2 before being hit herself. A similar story's happening in engineering, and we lose that too. Chakotay's in a corridor with someone who didn't follow orders and go to the bridge or engineering, but now might not be the best time for a court-martial. It doesn't matter anyway because he disappears while Chakotay dicks about with the screen. A quick call tells us there's only one other crew member aboard. Chakotay knows he can't win, so goes Scorched Earth instead, telling the guy to sabotage anything he can. Back to the bridge, where Bernard meets up with Astrophysicist, who has nearly full control of the ship. One problem, they can't control navigation. Chakotay's Scorched Earth idea has buggered it up. Bernard's unimpressed and orders them found, then promotes himself to captain. Chakotay's doing a bit more sabotage when he's discovered by a patrol. Pooping happens, but nobody gets hit, and he scarpers to a Jeffries tube as the warp core goes offline. Patrols are in the tubes too, and more pooping happens, but Chakotay escapes. Yet more sabotage increases the lights in engineering and upsets the guests there, but he's not done yet as he plans on proper fucking the computer too. He tries to call the other saboteur and get him to sickbay, as our guests are trying to delete the dock. There's no response, so Chakotay goes himself, and we'll have to hurry as he's next for the teleporter. We get to sickbay and download the dock to his mobile emitter just before he's caught. The emitter in hand, Chakotay is teleported away. We're in the holding compound, where the dock is concerned about battery life, the term having a rather literal meaning for him. Tuvok's back and tells us that there are 10 such compounds spread over a few kilometers, and beyond that only wilderness. A warden of some sort interrupts and informs them that this is their life now. It's been deliberately made comfortable for them and there's no escape. Janeway tells her to balls and she and the guards teleport away in a huff. Tuvok says the wilderness is bordered by natural barriers so we can't explore, which all seems very convenient to Janeway, who suggests this may be a simulation. As if to confirm this, a bit of scenery goes wibbly, and Spiky Face steps through and introduces themselves as our neighbour. They've been here for 9 years and found a place in their environment, a desert area, where they could move through to here. They also seem rather taken with our food and open to sharing what they know in exchange for snacks, making them my new favourite character. Later that evening, B'Elanna's poking around the dock's mobile emitter. She's changed his eyes so he can see the portals that Spiky Face used to get here, hopefully so we can find more. But not before we remind the viewer that B'Elanna and Paris are going to angry bang at some point. To the show's credit, it does use this to highlight the defensive nature of both of them, and that's a welcome exploration of their flaws. Neither likes hearing it, of course, so we have a bit of a flare-up, and Paris strops away like a Mardy git. Chakotay, Tuvok and Neelix are able to focus at least, and have made some weapons. Well, probably. We haven't tested them, so maybe we'll let Neelix do that. By morning, the dock has managed to find a new portal. Spiky Face does a gizmo thing to reveal it properly, and we go for a little explore after splitting up. Looks like the guts of whatever's making these environments, which is a promising development. B'Elanna, Paris and Spiky Face find entrances to more biomes, whilst Tuvok and Janeway manage to find some controls. We learn we're on a ship, and one with nearly 100 environments, holding over 1,000 prisoners. They find out the bridge is a few decks up, just as they set off an alarm. Time to leave, methinks. Warden gives Bernard a call to let him know there's a jailbreak. It seems he's in charge, as he gives her the authority to use force if needed, and Astrophysicist tells him warp engines will be back online soon so they can get back there. B'Elanna and Paris are looking for Tuvok and Janeway when some guards turn up. Spiky Face immediately surrenders and gives up the others, who just went round a corner. Tuvok evens the score by giving a guard at a terminal the Vulcan sleep massage, 1-1 and, hopefully, a new gun. Neither of them rushes to pick it up, suggesting there isn't one, but they do find a gizmo which tells them Spiky Face has been sent back to their environment using the alien teleporter. Janeway thinks we may be able to use it too and get back to Voyager. That might not be necessary, as Voyager's on the way. Warden tells Bernard that shit's gone bad, and he orders Astrophysicist to get close enough to teleport his security team over. It might all be over before they get there. Those guns Tuvok made are dogshit, a fact Paris discovers when he fires at a group chasing them. Let's use discretion instead and scarper to one of the biomes. To say it's not ideal would be an understatement, but we're reminded that the guards have a lower tolerance for the cold than we do, so it could be worse. They run in, the group chasing them more than a little hesitant to follow, until Warden orders them in. Janeway and Tuvok are dicking around with that teleporter some more. Apparently it has a 10,000 light-year range, which is why it takes so long to charge between shots. I suppose it's lucky they weren't using it at that distance, or Voyager would be around 10 years away. Back in the snow biome, there's some pooping. Paris explodes a rock and upsets the group following them as they leg it to a cave. B'Elanna gives the terrible gun a prod and says it'll manage one more shot. The cold proves a far more effective weapon, and the guard who just found them falls over a bit. Another gets pooped on by B'Elanna, so at least we have 2 decent guns now, which they leave behind. Not to worry though, as Janeway and Tuvok have found them using that console and teleport them out, so that's nice. Guess they must be able to do more than one at close range. Oh, and there must be no recharge at close range either, as Bernard and Astrophysicist find themselves in the freezer. Janeway pops in to say hi, apparently having found a gun, so I guess that guy we knocked out did have one after all. We're fully in control of the teleporter now and threaten to stick all of them in the freezer if they don't agree to surrender and free all of their prisoners. They don't have much of a choice and reluctantly submit to being kept in another habitat, while Janeway frees everyone else, contacts their people, and destroys the teleporter. Back on Voyager, B'Elanna joins Paris on the holodeck where, despite his terrified stare, they share meaningless platitudes to let you know they're fine with each other now as we fly away. If you can look past the logical fallacies, and there are a few of them, this isn't a bad idea for a plot. Hijacking a ship, station, or colony through swapping personnel is a pretty interesting idea, and the bastard in me appreciates the underhandedness of it all. The more interesting part, though, is the interaction between B'Elanna and Paris. I've said before that romance subplots aren't really my thing, but the struggle they're both having to overcome their own barriers, and the further nod to Paris being a dick as a form of buffer, is something I can get behind. The relatively utopian society that Trek's set in tends to give us an abundance of stable and well-adjusted characters, so there's something quite alluring about the ones who are emotionally fucked up, and I suspect that's why I wanted to see more of Angry Neelix too. End of episode.
Hello, it's Space Dog again. I've been asked to come and apologise for calling you all weirdos last time, even though thinking I'm your mum is obviously weird. He thinks it might stop some of you from going over to his Patreon and thing and giving him money, which, if we're honest, makes this whole apology worthless, especially when I was right. It's a bit insulting when you think about it, as it proves he's only getting me to do it for show. Hey, what a bastard. If I were you, I'd probably go cancel me membership. Woof.